Well, check it out, y'all. We got what you need. We're all living in apartments, condos, vans. Well, dude, even you can have a studio in a box. Yes, we can help you with that right here at Blind Knowledge. We work on your budget, and we figure out your measurements. We'll get you the best sound for the best price. Let me know, 877-237-1143 or at blindknowledge.com. Yep.
Spectres all around me, living in stark, blazing the dark. One by one, pictures gather round me. Where those moonflowers used to lost no more. Spectres gather round here, living in stark, blazing the dark. Night by night, stare into the black where moonflowers used to grow.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here trying to make the world seem a little more normal. Does it ever really happen? Yeah, we all know that's not true. But we try. And once again, I have an amazing guest to help me in that quest to some degree, as much as anybody can. And my guest tonight is Simon, and I'm sorry if I butchered this because I didn't ask first, but Simon Luthi, the Rocket Shaman, a founder, CEO, corporate strategist, alternative medicine practitioner, author, and podcaster, and that's a goddamn mouthful. But I am very happy to have Simon on. How are you doing tonight, Simon?
I'm doing well, Jeremy. How's life?
Can't complain too much, just trying to get through the day. But I'm happy I've actually had a slow week for podcasting, so I'm very happy that I could have you on tonight and first interview of the week. So let's have some fun with it. My first question.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I believe this actually has been a long time in the works, folks. So you're lucky you finally get to see it. And my first question, as always, what got you into the world of the paranormal, spiritual, supernaturalness? What drove you down that road?
Well, that's a great question. I think I had no choice. I was sort of chosen, I would say. So it's a little bit of, I know I've done this many lives, probably all the way back to Atlantis, but in this lifetime, it was an autoimmune disease that woke me up and, really showed me that I have some abilities in terms of the healing realms. And that started kind of that entire train.
Yeah. Well, you say autoimmune disease. I'm kind of curious. Which one, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I found myself bedridden and couldn't get out of bed, so my body was completely inflamed. And Western medicine really didn't have any answers to that, as they often don't. And so I went through the rigmarole of, being told, well, you have an inflammation and we don't know why, and here's some malaria medication. And the doctor goes, well, you should go see an ophthalmologist because you could go blind from that. And I'm like, the eyes are the only effing thing right now that's working. So why would I mess with that? And so that was really kind of what got me down the road of looking at alternative ways of healing. I was introduced to Alberto Villoldo and the Four Winds and sort of the shamans of Peru. And in one of the workshops at the end of the week, we had a ceremony. And that's when I felt energy in my hands for the first time. So it startled me. It's almost like, you have a kind of a water hose that's spraying into your hands. And that's really how this whole thing began. So I started, feeling energy, figuring out what does this all mean. Got my Reiki master certification, and then, through a bunch of different serendipitous events, met other teachers along the way. So I'm a classically trained shaman, which means, nothing more than he who knows. And so I treat have treated hundreds of clients by now in all kinds of things as to physical illness, emotional PTSD, anxiety, all that good stuff. And there's so much that can be done without the use of any drugs. It's just a matter of actually tapping into, the overall healing energy.
Yes, which my listeners might show have heard. They've heard about healing energy before, but everybody who does it has different perspectives and aspects that they use, and it's always an interesting kind of turn of the turn of the door to see like what's behind it for this one, because I've had a shaman from I think I want to say he's from Ecuador, but I've had non-shamans who do energy healing work as well. It's just there's so many different aspects of it that's amazing. And I actually had one heal my back pain through a podcast, and by God it worked. By God it worked. So I am a full believer in everything that energy healing can do because I've actually witnessed it. I've actually had it happen to me. So I
That's
can
awesome.
support it. I can support 100%. So the second question I ask everybody in the show, of course, because it is a paranormal podcast. Have you had any interactions with whether it be spirits? I throw in aliens and cryptids always, so that's always a harder one to get people to actually say yes to. But uh, any interactions with any of these mystical beings in our world?
Yeah, absolutely. So twofold to that. So yeah, I work with all of my spirit guides and helpers to accentuate and in essence, amplify, I guess, the healing that should take place. That's one. And then the really interesting thing is because of my work, also, like I mentioned, with people with panic attacks, anxiety, PTSD, kind of the realization that there's also some other energies that are out there that are not necessarily always up for the best. They try to keep us down. They try to keep us small. And so through all of that, I do kind of a twofold, what I would call removal of spirit entities. So that can result in someone that has suicidal and or depression, suicidal thoughts and or depression, that is also waking up and going like, oh shit, like I'm back. And I also do some pretty significant and intricate clearings of houses. So stuff that weird shit is happening in houses and people don't feel comfortable. So that's kind of the what I would call a bit more the darker side of of the spiritual realms as well. And I just have to come to realization that just because the eye cannot see for the normal person, that all this stuff exists. And so that's kind of where in my private practice where I spend most of my time.
Okay. Oh, do you do the clearing of the houses? Does it have to be in person, or can you do it like remotely, kind of?
If you asked me a year ago, I would have said, oh, absolutely, can it be done remotely? And it does work remotely as well. However, not sure whether the other side gets smarter or what's happening, but I have seen some places where you have to go in person. And I will also say, warning for everybody that's listening, some of that shit is not for the faint of heart. And you got to be careful what you're doing and use discernment. So if you have somebody that tells you they can clear, ghosts, demons, whatever is out there, make sure you check their credentials.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories of house clearings that were not pleasant for the people trying to clear the house. That literally has left them physically exhausted to the point of where they need to be like hospitalized afterwards. So it could be. And the reason I ask, and my listeners know this, is because my house is haunted, and I've had a couple people offer to like clean it for me remotely, and I'm always just like, I don't know if that's possible. But I mean, I guess technically in this world it should be possible, but I just don't know because I really don't know what's in the house completely. I know of two spirits that are likely in the house, but I've been told by people on this podcast there's a whole lot more.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, it absolutely can be done, but it's a question of whether those beings and ghosts, whatever we want to call it, are ready to be transformed, or ready to go, and just need someone's help to actually, it's almost like are they kind of stuck and they're ready to get on a train and get out of here? But I've also seen some that are like, no, that's my house. You are the intruder, and I'm not going anywhere. And that usually takes a little bit more negotiations and convincing work. Quite frankly, I'm also, does every house need to be completely clear? I mean, there's good spirits, and there's some good humor out there too. It depends on how you do with it. If you can handle it and you can talk to them and like why, we don't always have to like, clear all that, but it really depends a little bit of, how your energy is as you're there, right? Is it low energy and, you feel like you're being like an energy vampire, like, or is it like, oh yeah, I don't mind, I talk to them while I'm making my morning coffee.
I mean, from what investigators have told me, because I did have paranormal investigators come in when I first moved into this house, they are the two spirits I know of are the original owners of the house, and they never had children, so they watch over my children, from what I've been told,
Okay.
or at least that's what they gathered. They weren't mediums of any kind or clairvoyant, so they don't talk to spirits. They just kind of investigate it.
Okay.
So, I mean, they did use dowsing rods and all that. I don't know how much I trust those to begin with, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like we feel like there's something darker here too, though, that we can't quite put our fingers on.
I'll put you this way, especially since you bring up kids, right? If the kids are sleeping and they don't have nightmares, it's probably okay. But when the kids are waking up with nightmares, screaming in the middle of the night, and or I've seen also rooms where kids just won't fall asleep, like they just like the hysteric crying, where you as parents don't know what to do. It's time to to clean the rooms and clean the house, because those are not nice ghosts, so to speak. They are not watching over you. So you're the best judge, I guess, in your case, whether or not your kids are,
Yeah, I'd have to say we're more the first. We're definitely not the latter, because the kids have never had trouble falling asleep in this house. They never report having any horrible nightmares or anything like that, other than like the occasional one that every kid has. But so I maybe they are just nice ghosts, and maybe the entity that we don't know what it is kind of just leaves them alone. I don't know.
There you go.
That I think that entity tends to like our bedroom and tends to like the garage basement area more. But I don't know. If you go out my garage at night, there's a back part that's kind of like an add-on, and if you look in the darkness of there, you kind of feel like something's watching you.
Yeah.
So who knows? I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what it is. I don't know. One of these days, I'll get someone to come in, see if they could communicate. But so let's get back to your energy healing, though, because that's why we're here to talk about your amazing abilities. And so when people come to you, what's a typical session with you look like? Because I know people are always skeptical of these types of treatments if they're not familiar with them, because I'm sure someone going to acupuncture for the first time would feel the same way as well. Like, oh, I don't want needles in me. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, that's always been my theory, but
yeah. Listen, I mean, and I have an osteopath friend, and his favorite saying is that he's like doctor number 5, meaning by the time that they get to see him, they've seen 5 other, docs. And it's a little similar for me too. Like people don't show up as like the first thing, hey, I've got backaches and, I'm going to go Simone. It's usually like, oh, we'll go see the PCP, and then they go see a chiropractor, and then do some PT, and then, do an MRI and all that. So, one example that I can give you, for instance, is, somebody came that had severe back pains that nobody could figure out what was going on. Nothing showed on the x-rays. They were like muscular, and, put them on electrotherapy and, and exercises and stretching, and it just wouldn't get any better. There is also some, I would say, paranormal, I guess, activity you could call it, where there could be a curse or it could be somebody with an argument. So in this particular case, this gentleman had an energetic dagger sitting in in his lower back. And so no matter what people were trying to do, they just needed to address what was hurting him in the first place. So in this particular case, seeing it, feeling it, and then having the ability to remove it. And we also, should talk a little bit about energetic hygiene if we have time. It's very, very important, right, to take stuff out with discernment, and also dispose of it in the way that actually makes sure that it doesn't all of a sudden, linger and or attack somebody else, and on the way out. And so, this person then was completely pain-free, and, the PT goes, so what did you do? Because of course they couldn't explain. And maybe similarly to what happened to you that you mentioned before, right? That somebody, healed your back pain. So I will say this, I don't know that anybody would come to me that doesn't already have a history and go, at the very least, if it doesn't help, it doesn't hurt, right? I've tried all these different things, and it's time to kind of change tactics. And I get a lot of referrals. That's probably the big thing as well. And so I don't have somebody that would come and go, oh, I don't know, it's usually somebody that has already established some level of trust and understanding of, right, that this is the right path to take.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they probably were made at least a little comfortable by the person referring them, that like it's a safe thing and that nothing's gonna happen to them, and that it's just, it works. It works. That's the main thing, is that it works. You're not gonna be just, it's not what we all believed it to be in the 90s with all this type of treatments. Like in the 90s, this was all stuff you saw late night on TV advertised that you're just like, yeah, okay. But nowadays, there's a lot more sincerity to these fields, I should say. And I mean, I respect them fully, because it's just, if you could, like you just say, a spear dagger in the back, like no one would ever figure that out. No regular Western medicine would ever have figured that out. Like, it's just impossible. We don't have that technology.
Yeah, well, and you don't need technology really, right? But it's like you have to be tuned in enough, that something else is going on. Unfortunately, and again, don't get me wrong, Western medicine has its place. I don't argue that if you have a broken leg that you come to me first. Go take care of it. But there's so much other stuff out there that the Western medicine can't explain, or they come up with some kind of interesting diagnostics and titles, and could be this, could be that, that can actually be helped by doing more energy medicine.
Well, when I have people of your profession on, or similar ones, I always like to ask this question, because it is usually a good answer. What is the strangest case you ever had come to your door?
The strangest case I had come to my door. That's a great question. Let me think about this for a second. I have a request for a property clearing in Costa Rica, where a lot of not so nice things happen. So, somebody gets murdered. There's a child that drowned in the pool. The property is for sale for 10, 12, or 14 years, can't sell it. You have all kinds of unwelcome critters that are moving in, and had all kinds of people that have tried this as well, and that's probably been one of the strangest cases. And again, because it deals with some pretty nasty energy, and also a place where this property was built that I think was a sacrificial graveyard. So there's all kinds of centuries of old nastiness that's still floating around. So this is the stuff that I believe you have to do in person, and you can't do remotely. So that's been a pretty interesting up there in terms of strangeness as far as what's going on.
It sounds pretty strange. And when you say these dark creatures, like, are you referencing more demonic creatures, if you believe in such a thing, or just really dark spirits?
Both.
Really?
Both. And I mean, even into, I would call it, extraterrestrials in some degree. So, if you're thinking this is all science fiction in terms of having, people with reptile heads or other beings that are unfamiliar looking and scary looking, they absolutely do exist. Not all of them are enemies and or unfriendly, but there are some nasties out there. And a lot of it has to do, and I think the Catholic Church sort of made their own story about it. But when you kind of look a little bit at the evolution of the planet and kind of the experiment Earth, there's definitely on Atlantis, right? Why is Atlantis no longer there? Because we've kind of separated ourselves from source and spirit. And so afterwards, kind of Lemuria being the next civilization coming out of that. So that's kind of the begin of all the desires and things that came up as we realized we were humans. And out of all of that, that's really more where I would call these fallen angels, demons. There's a bit of the belief also of, for those of you that understand Rudolf Steiner, he wrote a ton of like works in the 1920s about all these different beings and different levels and where they all came from. So that's kind of what my perception and what I deal with, see quite often. But I always have to discern, right? So you can have a soul, even an animal soul, that doesn't necessarily means, badly, but it's just an additional needs energy to basically, survive. And so if you have, even a pet or an animal that didn't transition properly or was killed, in a tragic way, it can very well be that you still carry some of these souls around, right? And so that is equally as important to remove those as maybe what I would call some nasties that are also floating around and trying to make your life difficult.
Which, I mean, you mentioned that house in Costa Rica you were working on was a sacrificial ground. I'm sure they sacrificed animals there as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't imagine an angry bull ghost in your house. I can't imagine that. That's gotta be.
Yeah,
that's gotta be
it's not a pretty thing, and a lot of those clearings usually, can take days. And then when you start opening portals to actually transition some of these souls and ship them out, so to speak, right? There's all kind. It's almost like word gets out. Hey, there's this guy here that knows how to open portals. Come, let's go. I want to get out of here. So there's also, other stuck souls that missed kind of the 48-hour window after their death to leave. So usually clearings like this isn't done in a matter of, a couple hours. It's usually a couple days.
No, I would imagine that the ones that are a couple hours are just like the common ghost hauntings, the friendly ghost hauntings, for God's sakes. But so okay, well, a couple. Okay, well, I'm not gonna lie. A bunch of wormholes there we could jump down. I'm trying to pick which one I want to fly into, but I think I have to jump down the biggest one. I'm a paranormal nut. That's the way I am. I have to go with, because you mentioned Atlantis a couple of times now, and I'm a huge believer in the idea that Atlantis existed at one point. I've even talked to people who I talked to an author who wrote a book with his partner. And they basically believe they discovered the main city of Atlantis in a desert in northern Africa, or what used to be that main city of Atlantis, I should say, because it's now buried in sand. But they believe they found it in northern Africa, which I found fascinating as could be, because I mean, the old myth of Atlantis sunk to the sea just kind of got thrown out the window with that.
Well, it's interesting. So for those of you that are interested, Gaia TV has a very interesting show by a gentleman of Mattia De Stefano, and he claims that he is remembering all of his incarnations all the way back to the beginning of time. And so it's like, it's not an easy show you can watch in just one evening. I think it's 4 seasons and 13 episodes each, but he basically explains beginning of the universe and all the way through Atlantis. So he has a couple episodes that talk specifically about Atlantis. And so he claims, since he's been there, that Atlantis actually was in kind of the Azores and Palma de Mallorca. So those islands off the Spanish coast, including Northern Africa and Sahara, where that was placed. So it could very well be whoever you're referring to, that a city, could be buried somewhere there, because that's ultimately what he claims to be true as well.
Oh, okay. I'd have to look up his name because it's been like a year and a half since I interviewed him. But he would be probably very happy to hear that someone else is backing him up. Because I mean, I've had other guests on who wrote books about Atlantis as well, and they say opposite things. And I'm just like, I don't know. The way this guy describes it makes sense. Like the
Yeah,
way he
yeah,
described it, like it just clicked in my head. Like that kind of adds up. I mean, yeah, there were islands that were city states, basically, like you said, like the ones outside of Spain, and there were some in the Mediterranean, and I believe off of Africa as well. So, I mean, those one of those could have sank. Sure, why not? Islands sink all the time because that's nature. But I,
yeah.
but and he, I mean, everybody ever talked about Atlantis says that it goes back to the whole mythos. Well, I call it a mythos, even though it's probably closer to reality than what actually we're taught in school. The whole Palladians, Anunnaki, reptilian war on Earth is when Atlantis was huge.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And I mean, so as I said, like this, and he's a young, I think, Italian, and he talks about this with such a scientific backing that unless he is an absolute genius and knows how to storytell, but like I actually tend to believe that he knows more and has been there because, as I said, it just makes total sense. So anyway, maybe just if you have Gaia TV, and that's not I'm not sponsoring them. I don't want to make any advertisement, but it's just interesting that for the first time I actually was listening to somebody that I'm like, yep, this makes perfect sense. I do remember a few things as well from kind of what I remember from my incarnations, and so it's just interesting somebody actually talking about it in a more scientific way.
yeah, and I mean, Gaia TV, not a sponsor, but could be one. Reach out to me, folks.
There you go.
Always looking for sponsors. I got no problem with sponsors. Love sponsors. And I mean, I never thought of extraterrestrials actually like haunting a house, though. I mean, I know they like to. I know when they kind of get attached to a human and they abduct them for years on end, that they probably are around somewhere. But haunting a house, just never been the way I thought about it. But it's kind of interesting to think about that.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's the way I will describe this to you, that, and hopefully for the listeners, this makes a bit more sense. There are, we know the magnetic field around the Earth, right? So you have the Curry net and Hartmann grid, and basically these are the magnetic fields that are going, north, south, east, west, but then also horizontal or crosswise. Sorry, it's getting late and I'm losing my words. But in essence, think of it this way: if there is a magnetic field that's weak, and you're unlucky enough that your house is sitting on kind of the crossing point of one of those, the dimensional portals can basically be established in those, or dimensional hole or dimensional portal. And think of it this way, that through these portals, these beings can come in at will, right? It's almost like one of those elevators, like in the old days that they had with, elevators without doors. Remember those that were just kind of like going around? So you could jump off kind of thing. So a lot of these beings aren't necessarily there in that house and are like, oh, I'm going to set up shop here. I like it here. It's more as it's a one way to actually come in, to the Earth. It's almost like one of those port keys of Harry Potter, right, where you can jump in and be here. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always there. But what I do is I identify whether or not such a hole exists, and then I have the tools to close and seal those. So that's like the first step, so that actually nothing new can come in. And then I deal with whatever is left, that we can actually transform and ship out. But it's important for us to understand that it's not just aliens that are coming in with spaceships and UFOs, but there are actual, dimensional, I guess we should call them port keys, right? Where shit just can come in.
well, I mean, it kind of relates all back to the whole debate that paranormal people have been having for at least a decade now on whether aliens, extraterrestrials, are actually extraterrestrials, or if they are ultra-terrestrials. Are they coming through different dimensions, or are they actually coming from space? I mean, I tend to think there may be both. Because I think
I tend to agree with you.
I think I just saw a story a couple days ago about how a camera on the moon caught a foot and then got shut off. So, I mean, I feel like there are extraterrestrials that are close enough to Earth where they could travel by spaceship and get here. But I also feel like there's ones that are nowhere near Earth, different universes completely, and they just use dimensional portals to jump back and forth. But at their will, which, I mean, it's as
And look,
scary a thought as that may be.
and look, I mean, it's undoubted that they are already living amongst us. I mean, we have seen reports in Vienna a couple of weeks ago of this giant alien walking the streets, and then that was quickly took it off the news, and they were trying to pixel all the the video footage and security cameras and all that stuff, and and I've seen it even on Google Street View that you may have a set of trees that you are looking into, and it's pixeled out. Why is that? Right? What are the powers to be trying to hide? Right? And so I think there is undoubtedly, when you have to pixel a nice crown of a tree and leaves, right, that are green, come on, like something else is happening here that they don't want to know, or don't want us to know.
It's interesting you bring that up, because the podcast that got me into the paranormal years ago, that didn't get me into the paranormal, but re-invoked my love in the paranormal years ago, Monsters Among Us, Derek Hayes' podcast. There actually was a call-in, and the caller basically said that he was traveling through somewhere in Midwest America or Western America. I forget exactly where. Actually, I think it might be California or Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. But he basically stopped on the side of the road to go take a piss in the woods. And he's just standing there, and all of a sudden, like, it looks like a nice wooded area, and all of a sudden, it's like a hologram got dropped. And he sees all these people in camouflage running through the woods.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that right there kind of lends credence to this theory, because it's just people are seeing this stuff, and yeah, the government may be shutting some of them up, but the government's not going to shut them all up. Not everybody's scared of the government, so it's I don't know. I mean, I definitely am in agreement with you that the government knows there's things here. They know there's no doubt in that. They admitted UFOs are real to try to take people's minds off COVID, but that didn't work. But they admit UFOs are real, and I've been seeing a hashtag on Twitter that's been trending lately about Area 52 possibly being in Italy.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, because that's not what I'm interested in or what I do. But what I will say is that absolutely there's more between heaven and earth than what the eye can see. And I think there's way more than what's happening. And so we're kind of in this big unraveling, right? So there's a lot of us that experience this ascension energy and kind of feeling like, hey, we're actually starting to create this alternate reality, right? So some people talk about we're moving from 3D to 4D to 5D. I think we're already in the 5D. And, where I chose to focus on really is in healing arts, right? In terms of how can we stay absolutely super positive, and how do we not give in to kind of regular media and don't believe everything that we're fed, but start to feel ourselves again, right? So when we can access our innate ability to be in our intuition, right? So what do I believe, what I don't believe, and maybe talk a little bit about AI. There's a lot of people that are freaked out about AI and all that, and you can't believe anything. I actually think it's a good thing, because now we all have to kind of ask ourselves, with everything that we're reading and or seeing, do I believe this or do I not believe this, and what do I do with it? And I think it can only be a positive thing, so that we are starting to get into our intuition again. That's a God-given gift or spirit-given gift, however you want to call it, that we all have. So what I do is not oh yeah, Simone is like, this great healer. No, it's just, I've been shown that I have the ability to tap into this universal life force energy, and I've been given the tools to discern in how to actually reinstill healing on someone's physical body, and that's what I choose to do for however long I have left on this earth.
Oh, I mean, yeah, none of us really know how long we've left on this earth. I mean, I like to think I'm immortal. I like to think I'm immortal every day of the week, but it doesn't mean I am. It just means I think I am, and hopefully manifestation makes things happen. I don't know, but I'm hoping. But yeah, and you're right. You're right. We kind of jumped down a wormhole there, and to bring it kind of back to you, because I did look in. I was researching you over the last couple of days, and I saw a lot of your pages, applied neurocellular therapy, which kind of was more I read about it, but I kind of wanted to hear from your perspective on what that is.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I have 3 types of clients. I have the clients where it's like once and done, so it's like the miraculous healing occurs. I have second category where it's a bit more, it's layers, right? So because it's years and years and years of stuff that happened, karmic density, and ancestral thing that comes in. So that sometimes takes a little bit of an unraveling. And then I have the third type, doesn't work at all. And initially it was a little bit of my ego that, that certainly I have to acknowledge that came in and said like, man, like, I'm doing all the same thing. And like, why isn't this working? And what I found in the process of it is that although I have people come to me, it could be that they tried so many different things that they're skeptical, right? It's almost like, well, if this doesn't help, it doesn't hurt. Or it could be kind of the subconscious mind that says, oh, I don't know, like, I actually enjoy being in pain because that gives me all the attention. And so I actually don't want to, get out of that. And so I needed to find a way of where I could overwrite the neurological pathways from the cell structure long enough so that I could go deeper again in the healing work. So that's where the applied neurocellular therapy started to take hold. And I found, and you can see this on my website, simonluthi.com as well, the Lucia light, which is basically an LED and stroboscope light that's working on a very fast frequency. So it penetrates your pineal gland, and then it fires on all the 4 brainwaves, so alpha, beta, theta, and delta. And it's quite nuts. It's almost like you having an LSD trip without drugs. And so I can put people under the lamp for 20, 25 minutes. And I then really can go in much, much, much deeper. I have about a half an hour or so, 45 minutes max, of where the cell structure is reacting completely different to energy healing. And I've seen, great results as a result of bringing in modern technology and combining it with ancient wisdom.
Interesting. I like the combination of the two. I had another guest, Tom Palladino, who is a scalar energy researcher, and he kind of does the same thing almost, because scalar energy is most likely why they killed Tesla. So because it's free power for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, he's built all this technology to help harness it and use it. And I mean, I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on government watch list everywhere for this. But yeah, I mean, he just basically is trying to find a way to give this to everybody so that they have unlimited power without having to pay the electric companies hundreds of dollars a month to have it. Which,
yeah,
I love people who are trying to embrace the natural side of this world with technology, because it's bringing the best of both worlds together. It really is. And as long as there ain't no Mr. Burns out there trying to block out the sun, we're good. But
yeah, listen, I mean, we only have one planet, right? So anything that we could do to stop the fossil fuel and cutting down of rainforests and getting back to why we're here in the first place, I think will be awesome. Yeah, I'm curious what he does with it.
I am too. I'm keeping I get emails from him every day, because I gave him me and my family's pictures, and he has them up on his on one of his machines where he just bursts the pictures with scalar energy every day, all day. And then supposedly it's supposed to help you. Like even just a picture, your picture getting it because energy doesn't know time, doesn't know place. It just
Right.
so I mean, I don't know if it actually is working or not. I'm not gonna say I feel any different completely, but I mean, some days are better than others, and I don't know. Maybe it's working. I could hope. I like to think positively about everything I can in this world, but I don't know. I'm all for him. I'm gonna
Yeah,
keep an eye on his career and see where he goes with it, but
that's awesome.
because I'd like to stop being the electric company. Freaking $150 every month would be great.
Wouldn't we all? Exactly.
Exactly. So, and you are a man of many, many, many skills because, oh my God, your criteria list is so big. I was like, oh my, he's done everything. Because you are a Reiki master too, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. That's how it all started. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a friend joke with me at some point, and she goes, you don't incarnate often, but when you do incarnate, you pick the craziest lives. And I'm like, yeah, that's that's probably a pretty accurate description.
And I mean, I personally am a huge fan of Reiki. I worked with a Reiki master for a good 6 months in 2023, and she helped me unlock parts of me that I never knew were there. She improved me as a person. She she made me cry, for God's sake. I mean, her treatments made me cry, and I am not a man who cries ever. So that to me was like an accomplishment and a half because it was just like I could literally feel the bad energy being sucked out of me when she's working. And it's just I it gave me a whole new respect for Reiki. I've interviewed Reiki masters before her even, and I just until I experience it, until you experience it, it's one of those things that you just don't want to believe in because you're just like, how can somebody from a computer screen literally take energy out of my body and put better energy back in? Like, how is that physically possible in this world?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it is. It is. I'm a first-hand experiencer. It's 100% possible. I have felt like the biggest burns in the world were ripped out of my chest and good feelings were put back in its place. So it's insane. It's I can't think of a better word to describe it. I mean, Reiki is just insane. And so, what made you want to get into Reiki? Out of curiosity.
Well, so go back to my autoimmune. So I was trying to get better physically, and we did this ceremony at the end of the week, and I had this castle ruin in right on the border of Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and had my hands up, and then all of a sudden, like as I said, I felt energy entering my hands for the first time. And I was startled by it. I didn't want to know what to do. At the time I was still working my corporate job, and part of it was just like you go, okay, there's something here that's about to unfold, and I don't know where the journey is going to lead me, and can I feel safe, or is the whole is my whole entire life going to unravel? So for about a year I was like, this cannot happen. I don't know whether I want to do this, because a friend of mine recommended, well, maybe you should look into Reiki. His mom was pretty spiritual, and then I don't know what happened. Like in 2018, all of a sudden I knew I couldn't run from it anymore. Then it like very, very quickly went. I did Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki 3, Reiki Master certification, and was introduced to a bunch of other teachers. So it was the first modality because it's quite simple. It's you have the intention of just letting healing energy flow, and it will go where it needs to go, and it goes a little bit into trance healing, where it's not about doing, but it's about the observing and letting the energy do its thing. So if somebody is ready to heal, it's not really all that involved. And so it was a beautiful, or is still a beautiful modality that I still use, not in its truest form, anymore. There's a lot of symbols that I never really connected with. And at the end of the day, it's all about intention. So as my training evolved, that's the one thing that I no longer use, because I'm also curious when there's symbols and they've been passed down verbally before we had computers and all that. You were not allowed to actually copy them, and so you learned them during your initiation, and you have to actually draw them. these are all Japanese signs, right? You tell me as Westerners how well we know this kind of stuff, and over the hundreds of years, how well these actually. It's a little bit of like, what is that game called? The Chinese telephone, is that what it is? Like, where you whisper something in somebody's ear and then they have to whisper it again, and then whoever started, by the time they get to number 20, it's something completely different. Chinese whispers, I think, right, is what it's called.
I think when I was a kid, I think
it's like a child
game. Yeah. When I was a kid, I think it was just called telephone, but
something like that. Yeah.
Anyway, I think it was just called telephone.
My point being is, right, so I just wasn't sure whether these symbols were actually still, as Mr. Uzui actually channeled them, or whether they've been changed over the years, right? Because we can't go back and I guess we could go back and ask them, but
we could, but it'd be interesting trying to find someone with the past life to go back and ask them that.
So for me, the whole Reiki master was really an entry point into a lot of the, energetic work, and a lot of the shamanic training that I have received. So it's just interesting to me how different indigenous cultures have similar modalities, maybe slightly different tools to go about it, but these medicine men, medicine women, right, that have been around for thousands of years and have done beautiful work, and we've survived and thrived as humans even long before Western medicine, started to take hold.
Exactly, it's true. We did, and I was actually going to ask because I was curious. Because I know you studied in Peru and in Alaska with natives, and like I kind of was curious, like what was similar about the two cultures, but what was different at the same time. As far as the spiritual part
language. Yeah, language and food is different. The plant medicine is different, right? Because you use different plants, because you use what grows there, right? So it's quite different.
Of course.
But it's interesting then when it comes down to extractions. Some crystals are being used to extract certain energy, and so there's a lot of similarities there as well. And then smudging. Right. So the obviously here everybody uses white sage, but smudging has been used in all the ancient Egypt, and you use different herbs for all that kind of stuff. But the fact that we realized, we can actually remove bad energy by smudge is another similarity as well that you can trace around.
Yeah, we actually did that in our house not long ago. My Reiki master sent me some in the mail, and she gave me white sage and something else. I don't remember the name of. It was very, very South American sounding. I don't remember the name of it. It's
probably Palo Santo. Those are
you got it. You got it.
Those are the two well-known. White sage is used, to extract, and then Palo Santo is a bit more, to attract. Because I was just going to say, what a lot of people are missing, that, of course, it's good to smudge your rooms. It's good to have white sage on hand, and regularly as you clean your floors and your windows, that you also clean the rest of the energy. But what a lot of people forget is, okay, so now that you've gotten rid of stuff, and you talked about it, Jeremy, in your own case, what do you want to bring in afterwards, right? So you want to fill it again with with positive energy. And so there's a lot of different herbs and things like rose petals and rose oil, for instance, right, of attracting more love and sensuality, right? So it's always important that you actually bring the intention in that, okay, so now that you cleared the place, what do you want to attract instead?
Exactly. It's kind of funny you said that, because she also gave me a little container of money oil, because I'm in sales, and she wanted to help me make more money. So, I don't know if it's one of those things where it's because you believe it's working, it works, but it worked for a little while, and then I kind of got out of the practice of putting it on. And I really got to get back into that practice, because I was making a little more money then. So it happens to work. And I know you mentioned earlier that you kind of hinted at the fact that you like to talk about cleansing practices, like daily cleansing practices that people should be doing to keep their spaces clean and clear. So I figured I'd give you a chance to kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, no. Two things to that, right? So it's important as you go see a practitioner, whether that's a Reiki master or somebody else, that they use good energetic hygiene, right? So you want to make sure that the table that you're going to be laying on top of actually has been cleaned before. It's not just about putting new sheets on it, but was actually properly smudged and cleared. Agua de Florida is another great way of doing this. So that's one area, right? So that as you go see somebody, that they actually use good energetic hygiene. Because I don't know whether that happened to you guys, but let's just say you go and sleep at a hotel and you have strange dreams, and you dream about stuff that you don't know these people and or situations, and why is that, right? And my belief is because the energetic imprint of the person that slept in this room the night before is still there, and if you're sensitive enough to pick that up at night, right, there's definitely ways of, so that I always carry cleansing material with me. The other good way that I would recommend people do once a week, twice a week, is scrub their entire body with salt. It's just good to kind of get all this stuff off of you. And I always kind of say, okay, so all the nastiness can now go down and get into the drain, and then as you put nice smelling shower gel or body lotion or whatever it is, that you can say, okay, now the healing may come. That's, again, it's about letting go and then attract. So those are probably the two things that I would say you should do. And then there's so many books on smudging out there as well, if you want to go a little deeper into what else could you use, as far as a lot of people use frankincense as well. That's and copal is another, and then if you get into kind of the Indian ways, there's a lot of the smudge sticks as well that come there. It's just, I think it's good to do it and just clear your energetic space more often than probably most people do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to admit I don't do it as often as I should. Just, life gets in the way. But it's I mean, it's something that definitely should be done. I should be doing it more. I honestly should, especially in this house. But I don't know. It's just one of those things, and it's like meditation. I can't meditate for the life of me. I've tried so many times, and unless Jassy, my Reiki master, was watching me on camera, like making me do it, like it would not happen, because I force myself to do it if someone's making me do it. But I can't just sit there and do it. It's always like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta go do this, I gotta do that. Like, it's just 1,000 other thoughts running through your head when you're trying to meditate. It's just like, I can't find the center.
Yeah, well, and I think that's also part of meditation, is the mindfulness that actually your mind is is busy, and acknowledging that too. So a lot of tools that could help you too is on breath work, right? And actually not feeling like you have to now meditate to clear your mind. Because there's a great book out there called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And he talks about if our mind was a roommate, we would have kicked him out of our apartment a long time ago, because this thing never shuts up, right? And so realization that that's really hard to do for most of us. We're so overstimulated. So I find breath work as a really good way, to go about it. So as simple as, breathe in 6 seconds, hold 6 seconds, let it out 6 seconds. And now you start focusing on your breath, and you have to count. And so your mind is going to be hard pressed to now also have some thoughts while you're concentrating on the breath work itself. And that just calms down your vagus nerve. And so to me, for those people, and by the way, I'm one of them as well, that it's really hard for me to center, calm down, and meditate without my mind going a million miles a day. And then after you do this for a couple of days and a couple of weeks, you might recognize that, yes, as you meditate, thoughts still will enter, but you can go, okay, thank you, but not now. And you kind of just gently bring it back, because what a lot of people struggle with is like this I suck at this, I can't do this, and then you stop doing it. But the actual practice of quieting your vagus nerve through meditation or breath work, that's that's at the core of why we should do more of it.
I agree. I mean, glad to know I'm not the only one who can't do it 100% all the time. But all right. Well, I'll touch on one more thing that you mentioned earlier that I did want to touch on before we do wrap it up, because I know it's late for both of us, and I'm sure we both want to hit the hay pretty damn soon. But you spent when we were talking about when we were talking about the house in Costa Rica, you're saying that if they don't pass over in 48 hours, which I found it kind of curious that you put a exact number on it, because I've always been told there is no exact number, that everybody's door opens at a different time based on where they are and their path and whether they're ready or not to move on. But I know you're also an end of life doula, so I want to kind of get your perspective on that and why you said that.
Yeah, in my training and my belief, and also because I see what happens if people miss the train, that they're stuck. I do believe that there is a number, and so the reason I brought up the 48 hours, it's my belief, and not just my belief, but based on, if you talk to a lot of different people from these cultures, that you take your last breath and you have 48 hours afterwards to then basically leave the physical body and go into, go into the light, go back to source, go to heaven, or whatever you want to call it. And what's really interesting is, so the shamans that I trained in Peru, and Alberto speaks in one of his books about this as well. It is about the soul, so somebody dies, the soul is leaving, and the shamans would then put a cross on the forehead to make sure that they would seal the body, so that they would put a cross on the chakra so that the soul actually can come back. Because sometimes what could happen is you have somebody that dies, now you have the whole family that's wailing and is sad, and you still see that, and you're like, no, like I can't, I need to console them, I can't let them go. And so you are trying to get back in your body again, and or you are all of a sudden getting stuck in this 48 hours. And what's really interesting to me is, right, a lot of these shamans were or I should say the Spanish conquistadors were trying to kill them, right? So they were basically fleeing up into the mountains. They were in the Andes because the Spanish didn't really want any of that wisdom, to come out. And so when you think about when you have a Catholic priest now coming to give the last rites, they always put a cross on your forehead. Why is that? You ever question that? Because they actually took it from the shamans. But what ends up happening is, you may inadvertently, or they may inadvertently lock somebody in the body itself. Then the body is gone and the soul has actually not been able to transition. And so I do plenty of transition work to now know that there is a shit ton of souls, battlefield. I mean, I live down in Pennsylvania, lots of battlefields, all that kind of stuff. Understand that, like, if you miss the train, it's not just about, I can now on my own timeline decide, okay, it was fun hanging around as a ghost here for a year, it's now time for me to go. No, that train has passed. So it does need some intention to actually bring, and transition these souls afterwards. So that's where the 48 hours, and sorry, I went a little bit on a tangent here but maybe it's interesting for some of you to, to just understand.
I'm happy you went as deep. I'm happy you went as deep as you did with it, because I was curious. I really, because the end of life always fascinates me. I've talked to NDE experiences before too, and it always just fascinates me, the end of life phenomena of what actually happens. Like everybody, I mean, most of us are brought up that, you die, you either go to hell, purgatory, or heaven. There's only 3 options. There's no door D. You're only going to those 3. Have fun landing whichever one you land in. But I mean, it's just, there's so many more possibilities than that. And I mean, maybe purgatory is being stuck on Earth. I don't freaking know, but it could be technically. And I don't know. I mean, these days, I know from talking to people such as yourself that there are a lot more options for what happens to a spirit after death than just those 3. If those 3 even exist, that's a whole nother wormhole we're not going to go down to at this point. But yeah, I've got on that wormhole enough in this show. So people, if you want to hear my views on that, go back episodes, you'll find it eventually. But I want to thank Simon for coming on. It's been an amazing show. I've learned a lot in the show, and the shows I learn, I love. When it's not just the same things I've heard before, I love it. And you've put a lot of new information in my head. Now my world thesis is going to change a little bit again. But that's why I do this show, to keep it evolving. I am going to write a book one day, I swear to God, on my thesis. I'm going to write a book. But it's not anytime soon, folks, so don't worry about that. Don't go looking for it. So, where can they find you? Where can they find your services? Just promote yourself to the fullest.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me, Jeremy. What a great show. I love talking about this stuff. And as you know, like we could have gone on for hours, but yeah, it's getting late. So probably the best thing is go to my website, www.simonluthi.com. That has my contact information there, has a lot of the things that I do. That's a bit more, would call it corporate focused. And then the other one, www.sacredhealing.us, talks a bit more on the, spiritual side of the work that I do. And if I can help in any way, shape, or form, reach out to me, drop me a note, and happy to help.
Well, folks, you heard them, and both those websites will, of course, be posted into the show notes because, of course, they will be. And I will thank him, Simon, again for coming on because it's been an amazing show, really has. And for all my listeners, I will be back next week with some more interviews, I believe, and possibly even a one-on-one bracket. I think I don't know the topic off the top of my head, but you'll find out. And thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. I like and subscribe if you're listening, watching. You know where to find me. If you don't, shame. But check the outro. It'll tell you where to find me. And I will see you all next week. Have a good one. You can find me on Facebook as Jeremy Bryant, or you can find me as Uncensored, Unapologetic, and Untamed UQ Podcast Collective Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter and the Instagram as @JuggaloBastard, or should I say X now. And you can find me on TikTok as @JuggaloBastard Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube as Paranormal the New Normal. And you can also find me streaming on YouTube as Blind Knowledge Network, because all knowledge is blind until they admit Bigfoot exists.